Welcome to another episode of the Brooklyn Boardroom, where we are the business boot camp for whatever you're trying to build. So today's episode, I have my good friend, Jasmine. Jasmine and I worked together quite some time ago. Well, actually not that long ago, about a year and a half ago at Lionsgate. And Jasmine has been doing big things since then, even prior to that. So I'm super excited to have her with me. Thank you, Jasmine, for joining the Brooklyn Boardroom for this conversation. Really appreciate it. I know how busy it is for many of us these days who are trying to manage pandemic issues and on top of just the work we need to do on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for being part of the conversation.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I've always wanted to be, on your show, and I feel thank God for COVID, I was able to make it on your schedule.
Listen, I didn't pay her to plug me like that, but I really appreciate you saying that. Whether you mean it or not, I'm taking it all. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really appreciate that. Because, I've been doing this for a while now. And, as you know, Jasmine, what I tend to do is just kind of have conversations with friends in the business. And through those conversations, because they're friends, I think we're able to, kind of uncover and surface a lot of really valuable information that, young junior executives, content creators, even probably mid-level to senior executives can benefit from. So I think, the fluidity of the conversation is so connected to the connection between me and my guest. And obviously we're connected on many levels. We've traveled the world together, at least France, right? So, yeah. in Southern California. So we got many stories to tell on a separate episode. So again, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to just jump right in. I mean, the viewers all have access to your biography, so we won't kind of drill through that line by line. I'm just going to jump right into kind of getting to know your journey, okay? So tell us, Jasmine, let me set it up a little bit. So I know, and the viewers will learn that, you've operated both in the, in the business development space, the marketing space, publicity, sales, acquisition, distribution. I mean, you've worn a lot of hats. You've worked for a number of companies with very different cultures, Univision, BET, Lionsgate, to name a few. So you've seen a lot, been around a lot of places, and been very successful. So tell me a little bit about how you got started in the business. Take us back to college and then onward.
So I went to UCLA, and my major was history and Latin American studies. I originally thought I was going to work in politics, work in some government agency was my goal. So hence, the majors that I studied. And in college, I was an eager beaver. And I really wanted to maximize that university experience outside of, the classroom and, parties and fun stuff like that, and organizations I was part of. So I took a lot of internships while I was in college.
Really?
And because I'm in Los Angeles, okay, a lot of the internships came from the entertainment industry. I'd always liked entertainment, but I had never thought that I could get into it. I think because I didn't see people, of my background, represented on television or entertainment. So I thought it was going to be really difficult to ever get into entertainment.
Wait, real quick on that note, though, what is your background and where'd you grow up, just so we have some context?
Sure. So my mother's from Peru. Mm-hmm. I identify as being Latin American, American with Latino background. My father is Iranian, and so I've got that mixture.
Wow. I would have loved to be there when the two of them came together and fell in love. What a story to tell, right?
Oh, yeah. And soon got divorced, but that's another story.
That's another story, exactly.
A little bit explosive, but...
It doesn't mean the Peruvians and Iranians can't find love, right? The Persians and the Peruvians, it rings. Persians, Peruvians, it works. You know what I mean?
It totally worked for a little bit, so that was good. So, coming in LA, even though I see so much diversity, I really didn't see it in entertainment. Okay. So I thought, a career in entertainment was unattainable. I was very surprised. I found a whole bunch of internships in entertainment, and I thought, why not? Instead of getting a regular job at the university library, I thought, why don't I take this time and figure out what I really want to do? Okay. I've always wanted to do entertainment after I wanted to work in government. So I thought this will be just for fun. Mm-hmm. And what ended up being a just for fun internship, became into a long career that I'm part of, through now. So I took a few internships. I did some internships for a couple local television stations, mm-hmm, and I did everything from local events, marketing. I did live productions. I was a PA for some, late night talk shows. And I got a really good understanding of different roles in media that you typically would not know existed at all. And on one of my internships, it was with a local TV station. They really ended up liking me a lot. They said I was a go-getter. And after the 3 months were over, they offered me like this part-time job, which I continued during my undergraduate career until I graduated. And it was great because I got to see all the different aspects of what a media company entails. It's not just people in front of the camera or the people who are producing the shows, but there's a whole bunch of management that's coordinating, you know, what you see on television, what you see on the movie screens. And I was fascinated by it. So I got a really good understanding of different departments. And then when I figured out the one that I really liked, I got a job there. So I started working in the programming department.
What company was this at the time?
It was actually with a local Univision station in Los Angeles, Channel 34. It's
Channel 34, okay.
Yeah, KMEX TV.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm curious too. I mean, you know, just as I'm listening to your journey and I think about how I know you, it just dawned on me. I'm like, why did you never pursue a career in front of the camera? You seem like you would make a great correspondent, journalist, anchor. Is that something that you never thought about?
Again, it was because this is something I would give recommendations to, you know, kids out there. Yeah. I just never thought that somebody like me would be wanted in front of the camera.
Wow, isn't that deep?
No, I just never thought of that as a possibility. Wow. It wasn't until I got older that I realized, oh shoot, I should have thought about that. Yeah. Because I did get to do, you know, later on we'll talk about it, but as I went in to do PR, I did a lot of in front of the camera interviews and stuff like that. And somebody asked me the same question, said, why didn't you pursue this, you know, this route?
Yeah, that says a lot. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of us who identify people of color or have ethnic backgrounds can relate to the fact that we didn't see representation of us in the mainstream media. Therefore, we didn't think of those as career paths. And, you know, when we think about today compared to, you know, when we grew up, it's hard to believe that, you know, we took that perspective, right? Because, you know, we live in a world that reflects so many different lifestyles and colors but back then it was so much less than that, right? And then on top of not having the career tracks put in place and the support put in place to encourage us down those paths. So I'm glad you talked on that. We'll talk more about that. One other thing I wanted to ask about too was, again, I know you're a very multifaceted executive. Now, when you're going through your journey through college and you're doing all these internships and you land a job, quote unquote, at what point did you begin to identify what was your natural gifting? Because I think we all find that at some point, like some of us later than others, like we do 50 different jobs and then 15 years later we realize, wow, that comes easy to me and I'm actually really good at that. Whereas before you would have never thought of it. Did you ever identify what your natural gifting was and when and how?
So it happened on 2 occasions. So I'll go back to even high school. I was an eager beaver way back then. I did a couple of jobs in high school and I thought I might want to go into the medical field when I was 16. And I ended up working at a hospital as a volunteer. And I figured out I am terrified of needles. So the medical field is out, but they really liked me. So they said, you know what, you're really good at talking to people and making them feel comfortable. So we'll make you the receptionist for the summer. And I loved it. And when I went into Univision, I had a mentor who was my boss, the person who hired me. And she would give me advice. And then she would tell me, you know, you're good at this, you're not so good at this. And that's how I was able to identify, you know, what I excelled in.
What you were natural. So how would you brand yourself in that regard? So what is your gift? What do you call it?
Oh God, when I was a little kid, it might've been the gift of the gab.
Okay, no, I mean, that's relevant though. That's very relevant. Yeah, no, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think my gift is I'm an overachiever. I always want to understand everything. I'm also very empathetic with people. So I think I'm very easy to speak with. Yeah. People naturally are able to tell me things that they probably wouldn't tell somebody else. They feel comfortable with me. I think it could be a little bit persuasive, but not in a pushy way. Yeah. As well. And I feel like I'm an activator. You give me a project and I'll activate it for you, no matter how long it takes.
No,
I'll dedicate 100%.
I think that's really good. And I think, for the young people listening and watching this, I think it's really important for them to understand, like, it may take some time to identify that special gift. And look, and this is not just for young people, this is for people even our age, but you have to probably have a lot of varied experiences to begin to, figure that out, right? So I think again, it sounds like, and this is the very beginning stages of your professional life, you had a ton, and you continue to do that. So one of the things I guess I can speak to, just knowing you for a while now, one of the things I think you do really well is, you still shine under pressure. You know how some people, when they encounter a challenge or a difficult person, situation, whatever, they begin to crumble, and you can see how it cracks them, and you can see it wear on them, better yet. Now, that's okay when you're at home or you're in personal time, but when you're in a work environment, you're not afforded that kind of that luxury. So you have to be able to still like perform, still project confidence, strength, even when you're like in excruciating pain because of something going on. And we would, you and I would commiserate on many occasions about people that were bringing us tons of pain, on a day-to-day basis. So, but when we would have those conversations, you always tended to continue to like, your personality and the joy, and you still shine through. And again, I don't think very many people can do that effortlessly. And also, you would complain about your feet hurting with the shoes. I remember that.
Oh yes, my high heels.
But the other thing I'll speak to too is, again, during our travels, in France and stuff, and the festival market, you can make friends with anyone and build a relationship overnight. Like you really, you have this gift, but watching you do that and hearing you talk about yourself, it reminded me how effortlessly you were able to do that. So again, I think it's a testament to your success, but I just wanted to just share that only because I think it's really valuable for people to understand,
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. But I'm genuine when I'm really interested in so many people and learning about their backgrounds. I'm genuinely asking these questions about them.
Yeah, no.
I'm doing it on purpose, but I genuinely have interest in learning about people's backgrounds, their own personal journeys, how they got there, what they do for their job. Totally. And I feel like I've learned so much up to now from anybody that I meet. And
it makes people feel like relevant or like valuable. You know what I mean? Like they're not, sometimes you can be in conversations in business settings and you can just tell when the person's just not interested, right? They're just kind of doing it to, but just making the most of time. So now you had an education you studied, I think, history, right? In undergrad, right?
History and American studies.
Totally. But then you dive into this business, publicity, marketing world. So did you feel at some point during that journey that you maybe should have taken business courses, got an MBA, studied business, or do you feel like not having that traditional background didn't slow you down at all?
It didn't slow me down. So history and the humanities, I felt like I had a wide breadth, and I acquired a lot of skills such as, great written skills, organization skills, opportunity to analyze situations, and then be able to synthesize that into a presentation, into a report. So I think that background helped me, and I wasn't limited. I kind of had an opportunity to try different things. I did think about getting my MBA, and I got accepted to go to an MBA school. However, when that was going on, I got promoted at my job into being a director. And I felt like, so I felt like the experience I was going to get being a director was going to be, pretty much equal to what I would have gotten at the MBA program.
I see. Yeah,
and so I made a decision not to go the MBA route, but I was going to go that route.
Interesting. Yeah, again, it sounds like you didn't even need it though. It sounds like your career just soared nonetheless. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
But okay, so tell me this. So you worked, you've touched on a little bit. You worked in a very number of organizations, a very number of roles. And I think one of the things that's valuable from that experience is understanding how corporate culture can vary and and shift from one company, from one department to another, from one company to another, from one leader to another. So to name a few, you have BET, Univision, Lionsgate. I think there are others that I can't think of at the moment. But can you talk a little bit about like what it was like, particularly between working in a company focused primarily on an African American audience to a company focusing primarily on a Latin American audience, and then another one that was focused on a broader commercial, like the dominant culture, right? Like, what is that like inside these organizations? What did that feel like? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I'll tell you this. So like you said, each corporate culture is very different. And even like you said, within each corporation, each department has their own mini, microcosm of cultures too that you have to deal with. I'll start off with some advice. One of the things I've learned as I've gone from one corporate culture to another is that sometimes some can be a little bit jarring from the prior one you were at. So my recommendation is to, one, adapt yourself, but two, to also bring some of the best practices that you've acquired through your, career experience to this new environment as well.
Very important.
So I'll start with Univision. I worked at Univision, Telemundo, BET. What all three have in common is that they both target, a different minority or ethnic group, being the Latino market, being the African American market. So what all three had in common was that because we were dealing with trying to convince potential brands or other companies to partner with us, we were held at a different level than a mainstream media company. We had displayed, unfortunately, a lot of negative stereotypes. So we never had an opportunity to have a downtime when we presented. We always had to bring our A game. We had to be buttoned up when it came to our presentation, the information we provided, to the way we even dressed and presented ourselves. We could never be lazy or anything like that. So with all three companies, we were always told, you always have to look better than the competition, because we're being held and judged differently than somebody who comes from a mainstream, TV station or movie studio. So I learned that early on, which was always to have your A game and represent your company well and yourself well too.
Well, tell us this. I mean, you don't have to give away names and dates and social security numbers, but like, can you give us any anecdotal experiences in any of those organizations or others where, because you represented a market that was considered to be the marginalized community, minority, whatever, that, the stereotyping was very evident. Is there any stories or examples you can point to?
Oh, yes. I've got a few. Without naming names, we presented to a company and we wanted them to advertise for the first time to the Latino market. And that person basically said, I do not want to have Hispanics or Latinos coming to my company or my place of business. I don't care how much potential they have, but I don't want those type of people coming.
Wow.
And in many cases, they would like to match us with executives in the company that were maybe white.
Okay.
And take us to those places of business because they felt that that person would feel more comfortable with a person that was maybe who resembled them more than somebody that was of color. So sometimes early on in my career, they would pair us up with somebody who would. Got
it. So all that does is perpetuate the issue of, number one, you're not representing, you're not being given the opportunity to represent the company as a woman of color. And the perception is you need to have this other person who's maybe a white male or white female to do it, so the perception then becomes you're not equipped. But that's not the issue. Issue is they want to find someone who's a little bit more relatable for this particular business opportunity, and not deal with the reality that maybe they're a little racist or maybe they're a little biased or whatever, and deal with that head on, right? So by virtue of that, and I don't want to speak for you in this regard, but I would suspect that if those things kind of happen, then your growth in the organization gets stunted, because then you're not seen as a person who has closed the deal with the big brand because Bob or Jane were there and they did it. You know what I mean? So then you can't excel as quickly as others. I mean, just one example, but I really appreciate you saying that. It points out another complexity for people of color in those situations, because here you are, trying to do business as a woman of color and of Latin descent and being told to your face, I don't want your people patronizing my business. So so here you are in your own kind of identity, probably doing something like, what the hell? I've just been insulted. But then you have to be professional, I guess, and ignore that, right? So isn't that must be extremely difficult to do?
Yeah, it happened early on. Thankfully, as time went by, I didn't have those type of experiences anymore. Okay. But early on, when that did happen, what was also interesting, and this probably also happens, it happens with all, communities of color, is that you always have somebody say, but you're different.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You're different.
Yeah, you're one of the good ones.
About the others. And you're like, no, you're talking about me. But no, you have to keep it professional, because if you end up lowering your standards, I think you could be stern and firm, and just say, okay, thank you, and goodbye, and walk away. But that happened early on, and thankfully the companies I worked for, they would just send us off, and they believed in us. And I think little by little, we really changed, the landscape, and people got used to seeing us and out there. And they did say that we did throw the best company parties.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Both at BET, at Univision, Telemundo, all the clients would always say, you guys throw the most fun parties that we've ever attended to. You guys have great rhythm. They would always
parties with the best food too. I can believe it. So take us a little bit deeper, right? So, for those that don't understand or don't have a connection to Latin culture, we know that, well, those of us that do know and are connected, we know that Latin culture comes in various shades and versions, right? And experiences. You have certain media companies that market to the English-speaking Latin community, some that's market to the Spanish-speaking Latin community, and some that focus on Latin Americans outside the U.S., even though they're a U.S. company, right? So, and again, just from my own experiences, I know that working in those environments can often be very, what's the term? Very patriarchal, I think is the term I'm looking for, but like very male dominated, right? Very machismo culturally. So as one example, so what I'm wondering from you now is, again, I'm thinking about Telemundo, Univision, and PANTAYA, right? Another company you work for that was a Latin folk company. So tell us a little bit about what it was like working in those various organizations. Again, no need to identify any particular company, but working in those other organizations, oftentimes with the Latin culture to doing business versus the American culture in business, and how do you manage and become successful in that environment?
Well, all of them were US-based companies.
Okay.
So I think that helped versus being, based outside of the United States. So we all followed basically the US culture and what was going on at the time. Probably when I started, it was harder to see more female executives. Okay. There's very few female executives. Tons of coordinators were females. I was one of them. And it was really hard for us to move up. Okay. They would automatically bring a guy who graduated from college and give him an executive position. And then us females were stuck being the coordinators.
So it was that blatant though, like, okay, he's got a bachelor's degree, he's got an executive title, and then the woman comes up with her bachelor's degree, oh yeah, you're gonna be an assistant or coordinator. Out the gate.
Absolutely, 100%. That's how it started for us. Wow. And it wasn't until there was a group of us girls who had all graduated college, and then we were the busy bees, and then we realized that we had to speak up, and we all said, hey, we want to move up too. We don't want to be coordinators our entire life. And then we were also held to a different bar, so we had to present before we got the position. Versus sometimes guys, they would go golfing together, and then they would automatically get promoted. And then we had to do a little bit more work to show that we could also do the work. And, that was in the beginning. And, thankfully, I'm happy to report all the teams I worked with, funny enough, not by design, ended up becoming mostly female-driven teams. Wow. At BET, the entire advertising team in Los Angeles was women, from the SVP to the assistant.
Really?
They were all women.
But I mean, I would imagine that the women in those situations, especially women of color, would be even more equipped because, again, you're working twice as hard. twice as long under more challenging circumstances. So of course you're going to be even more suitable and more equipped than, the average, like white male executive in that environment. Just, but again, I think that's fascinating, and I think again it's a testament to your tenacity and other women in your position who've been able to because I'm sure you've known some people. I know I've known who just give up and say, I'm not dealing with this. I don't want to deal with this crap. I quit. I'm going to go do something different. I'm tired of fighting, the going against the current in terms of the corporate culture that doesn't support, the variation of voices and color tones. So anyway, incredible journey. So let's shifting a little bit, right? So thinking back on, again, the career, and we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what you did or what you're doing now. But again, thinking about the breadth and width of your journey, anything you wish you would have known when you first got started that after having this many years in the business that you know now?
Yes. Obviously hindsight's 2020. Yeah. So when I started off and I was a coordinator, I would work some long hours, 10 hours, 12-hour days. And it wasn't because there was a lot of work. I really wanted to give the best work, but I also would ask for more work because I wanted to move up. So that was great. The issue was that I wasn't communicating that I wanted to move up. I was hoping that people would just see that I was working really hard and going above and beyond, the work that I had to do, that they would say, wow, we're going to promote her. It doesn't happen that way.
You got to be vocal. You have to speak up. You got to be vocal and let people know.
Yes.
And search
100%.
That's another interesting.
Yeah. So something I learned, out of college, somebody told me that. They said, you know what, besides working, 10-hour days, staying in the office all day, you need to go to some of the networking events. You need to network within your company culture. And they would all do happy hours at night. Some of the executives, would get together, do some group dinners. But because I was working, I would just stay behind and do that work. And I felt responsible, like I can't go because I need to finish this, project, blah, blah, blah. And then what I learned was I should be going to these events. And again, that's where mentors, come in place. I had a mentor, I mentioned it to her. I said, wow, they promoted this guy who does nothing compared to all the work I do. And then she told me he goes to every networking event. He's there, he's top of mind, he's talking to the executives in a more casual setting. You just stay behind and do all the work. And that's something I wish I would have learned early on.
Yeah.
To just assert myself and just really express what I want.
That's a really good point. I mean, I think that's key, right? And that's how business works. And we've all heard the term, the squeaky wheel gets the grease or gets the oil, and you got it. It's so true. All right, so talking about the actual work you do and have done, right? So you've worked as marketing and publicity, business development. Sounds like a lot of these things may overlap. So can you explain to us how these roles may differ and your skill set in each role?
Yeah, absolutely. So sales and marketing go hand in hand. They both are trying to achieve the same goal, which is increasing, a company's products and services and increasing awareness. So both sales and marketing go hand in hand. I highly recommend anybody that's starting off in entertainment or any job or any career path to really get a sales job, be it in high school, be it in college, because it really gives you an amazing skill set. It will make a lot of people uncomfortable to do sales. Some people don't have, let's say, the personality to do so, but you might not have the personality, but you can still be successful in sales. So I've done 3 types of sales. I've done advertising sales, which is basically trying to get brands and products to advertise on the various TV networks and platforms that I've represented. I've also done distribution and licensing deals, and that's where I try to get television channels or content to be carried on broadcasters, to be carried on cable and satellite companies, to be carried on streaming platforms as well. And then the third form of sales that I've worked on is developing B2B, business to business partnerships. And these partnerships might not necessarily mean an exchange of money, but it might be a barter of services and advertising to help both companies work together. So that type of sales I've done. From sales, I've jumped into marketing, and that was because I had a boss tell me, hey, you're really good at marketing. And I never was classically trained as a marketing person. But he said, the reason you're really successful in sales is because you really develop all these marketing campaigns and you're very creative. You really understand what the client is looking for and how to achieve their goals. You know, you just don't sell the product and walk away. You still, you know, meet up with them, figure out ways on how your product will help their goals internally. So for marketing, I've held various positions. I've been a vice president of marketing for a couple enterprises. One of them had to do with distribution and licensing. So once somebody got our content, I would develop campaigns to increase, you know, branding and awareness for our programs that are now being carried on these new platforms. I've also done acquisition and retention marketing for streaming companies. And basically, you know, most streaming companies, their basis for their business is based on how many subscriptions they get. So I'm trying to get brand awareness for the platform, try to get people subscribed. And then once you get them as a subscriber, you want to make sure you keep them. So I've done retention campaigns for that. PR, publicity, is a tactic within the marketing department. And so since I work for a movie studio and I work for TV channels, I've done a lot of PR, which has been from press releases to press junkets to red carpet premiere events to grassroots events to just try to get publicity for either a television program I was promoting, a platform, a TV channel that I'm working on. I've also been a spokesperson for various companies where I'm trying to promote, you know, either my TV channel or the company I'm representing onto various media outlets.
It's interesting. I mean, again, you've done a lot. So let me ask you this: if a young person is coming to you and saying, "Hey, look, you know, everything you're doing is what I want to do one day. I would enjoy doing it all. However, show me the path that will place me in the, like, will directly line me up with a, how would I say, to the C-suite, to a very senior role inside an organization." Now, oftentimes the revenue generating roles tend to give you lots of exposure for that because you're making money for the company. But I don't want to assume that would be the case in all situations. But looking at the roles that you've had, the roles that you played and some of the functions, is there such thing as like a map that you can draw out and say, okay, if you want to make it over here, then then shorter than the usual time span, this is kind of how you want to plot the course?
You know what? There isn't a path. I think long time ago, there might have been a path that if you were in sales and then you moved up within the sales ranks and to management positions, you could still move up to be, you know, a general manager or become a CEO. I think that was like a direct route long time ago. But most recently, I feel that might not be necessarily the case. I think a lot of it has to be with your tenacity, how much networking you do, who are your contacts, how successful you are in your role, how you move up. I think that's important, but I still think that somebody should try some revenue generating role at least once in their life, because I think that gives you an idea of what your company needs to achieve.
Yeah, and it forces you to break through any trepidation, shyness, things that would keep you kind of like more insular, right? And prevent your ability to really connect with people, learn how to just get out there and just do it, right? So
Correct.
That makes a lot of sense. So thinking now about how the industry has changed, you know, we have the streaming wars, we got the pandemic, which is a separate issue really, but you know, there are so many outlets right now producing content. The budgets of a lot of these stories we're telling now are like mushroomed, right? You know, the competition is fierce. So like, how has the jobs you used to have, the marketing, the publicity, the development, like how has that changed in today's climate? Like, is it any different to run a marketing campaign, to run a publicity campaign, to build a business partnership which involves bartering? You know, is it any different now than it used to be 5, 10, 15 years ago?
Oh yes, it has changed so much. I can compare marketing campaigns I did in the 2000s versus campaigns I did in 2015 or I did last year, and they've mostly all moved into the digital space.
Okay.
Budgets have also been decreased, I think, across most companies.
Oh, interesting.
You know, if you think about the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, I think that set up for companies to be a little bit more mindful about their budgets and how they spend them. And even though marketing is a really important function for a lot of organizations, it's usually the department that sees the most cuts. It just makes you a more creative person with the money you have to play with it. But like I said, it's the tactics have moved mostly into the digital space, which can be a little bit more economical. And you can really scale it up, you know, with social media. You know, some tactics are still the same. You know, press junkets are still the same. Now, I think we can add Zoom to them.
Yeah, of course.
We do Zoom press junkets as opposed to doing in-person junkets. But yes, it has changed, I would say, night and day. There were probably more tactics that I had to do, you know, in the 2000s than I had to do now.
Really?
But conversely now, I have more clutter to fight through. I gotta get my message across. So I've got tons of people who are also giving away tons of messages, you know, across all platforms. So it has become a little bit more difficult to get your message through.
Okay. Well, now, I mean, speaking of message through and a person who operates both in acquiring content for clients, selling content for clients, you know, the pandemic must have had an impact on that, right? So what is it like now operating in that space, specifically when it comes to sourcing, you know, content or selling content?
So a lot of the over-the-top streaming services, they've all experienced an immense boom, you know, because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So of course, a lot are looking for content. The difference is a lot of streaming services, like let's say a Netflix, they make their money not on how many hours more somebody's viewing their platform, but based on the subscriptions that they get.
Okay.
So while they might be looking for more content, I'm not saying this is Netflix specifically, I gave that as an example, but any streaming, you know, provider might not be paying, you know, a license fee like they might have paid, you know, years ago for it.
I see.
A lot of them are doing rev share deals, and basically that is for advertising. You might split the advertising revenue share from that program. You might get a minimum guarantee for that program. But definitely there's a hunger for content. There's tons of content out there. There's so many platforms now that are out there. Some are subscription services. Some are what I like to call freemium services, which are basically free streaming services, like a Tubi or a Pluto TV.
Yeah.
And those are basically an advertising video on demand platform. That's where they make their money, is through advertising. And, you know, Netflix makes their money, or Amazon, they make their money out of subscriptions. Well, and Amazon also makes it, Amazon Prime makes it on video on demand as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's think a little bit about like the rev share world. Again, the idea that a streaming service is going to acquire content and tell the content creator, hey guys, don't have any upfront money for you, don't have a guarantee of compensation, but I'm going to run some ads against your programming, and whatever they pay me in advertising revenue, I'm going to share that with you, right? So can you give us a sense, without having to do any real research, like what kind of money are we talking about from the low end to the high end, right? So and I'm thinking about this for the content creators out there, the small companies who have content, or the independent guys who are looking to place their content around town.
Yeah, so there's different ways that you can do ad revenue splits. Some of them are with TVOD. which is, let's say you sell them a movie, you give them a movie,
Yeah.
and you price the movie at $20, and basically you do a 50-50 split. So everybody who subscribes to that movie, you know, the company gets $10, you get $10 from that movie. It really all boils down to the marketing that you do and the platform does for your content when it comes to TVOD.
I see. Yeah, because I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I just said the marketing is a direct correlation to how much awareness you have for that content, so that you'll get, you know, some more subscribers, you know, subscribing to that movie.
Yeah, because the issue is there's a lot of clutter, like you mentioned earlier. So in order for your content to break through, you have to really, you know, you got to really do what you can to market. And it sounds like what you're also saying too is, if you're a content creator, if you are a small production company, you have a lot of material, a lot of content, you can't rely on the streaming service to do the marketing for you, because they probably won't be able to do sufficient, so that, you know, they're not going to do a big, you know, marketing campaign just for your show, for your titles. You're going to really have to get on the ground and generate that buzz if you want to see your content generate the ad rev, you know, that you're looking for. Gone are the days where we can expect a programming service to just promote our shows because they're great shows, right? They just so much content out there. Okay, appreciate explaining that to us. So now shifting into something a little more fun. So you also tend to spend time, you know, doing what you do, acquiring and selling content and supporting your clients in the international marketplaces. So can you describe for us a little bit about, like, you know, what that feels like and kind of how those markets operate when it comes to, you know, the sales agents, the acquisition execs, the distribution execs? What are the environments like? You know, why attend any of these things when all of it can be done online?
So I'll go back to something one of my bosses once told me when I was in sales. Told me relationship before task. He wrote that up on the board for all of us at work, and said, for all salespeople, I want to make sure you develop these relationships and you cultivate them. And when you go to these markets, nothing except for obviously the pandemic can substitute that in-person connection that you have, and also the experiences. For example, the markets, the way they're set up is they have an exhibit hall. You have a lot of programmers, you know, be it movie studios, be it, you know, TV networks, independent producers who have their own, you know, stand promoting their content, you know, their services as well. And then people, you know, walk by and get information. The second aspect of a market is you'll have a lot of seminars, keynote speakers from a lot of industry leaders, which you can learn a lot about the trends in the industry, some best practices as well. The third aspect of it, which I think is just great and is where I've done a lot of my business, is also the networking events. A lot of these markets have a lot of receptions, cocktail hours, opportunities for you to, you know, do dinners with some clients that you otherwise would not see because they're on the other side of the world, and you have an opportunity to have dinner with them and really talk things through in a more social setting. So whenever I go, for example, at the Cannes Film Festival, the joke is that you do more business at the Carlton Hotel, which you know very well.
Yeah.
And that's a place where you see people closing deals, is at the restaurant outside versus sometimes the Palais where all the exhibit halls are at. So that's why I like to go to these events. Sometimes you meet people you otherwise would never have connected. Short story, last year I was at MIPCOM in Cannes. We were stuck in a horrific rainstorm. It tends to rain during that time really badly.
And by the way, MIPCOM is a TV market for those listening who aren't aware, in the south of France, in Cannes, France. Okay.
Yes, thank you. And terrible rainstorm, and I'm waiting for an Uber. And the gentleman that's right next to me is also waiting for an Uber. We're stuck for half an hour. No Ubers are coming by at all. No taxis, no nothing. And we started chatting for a little bit. We bump into each other the next day at the Palais, and we talk about, oh my God, how, you know, did you dry up, blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, we're talking business, and he ends up becoming a client of mine. And
Wow.
he told me, hey, I'm looking to do this and do that. I'm looking for somebody. Do you know anyone? I said, well, I can actually do that for you. And I would never have met this person had I not, shown up to the event.
Would this be your Russian connection, Jasmine?
No, but that happened. That happened at the World Cup.
Okay, yeah, I know you have ties throughout the universe.
I do. I do.
Every country and continent, you just, but
Yeah.
that's phenomenal. But I think there's a lot to be said by that because, I think a lot of people, especially a lot of folks kind of from the tech world, may not appreciate the value of relationship building in person. In our business, it's such a relationship driven business, and you really have to, lean into that if you want to see the fruit from your relationships, because, and then again, to the idea, why would I fly halfway around the world, spend all this money just to be at a film market when I can call this guy, email this guy, because your competition is there, right? You know what I mean? So if you want to land that opportunity, build that relationship, have a face-to-face, connection, then you're going to have to be on the ground to do that. But so this raises another important question, I think, too, though, is, so what do you do? And I know you've been very resourceful as well. So what are the tips you'd have for young entrepreneurs who don't have the budget, students, creators who realize the value of it but can't afford it? Like, what are the suggestions you may have to maneuvering their way over there without necessarily the plata?
Oh yes, there's a couple ways. Some of these markets
Mm-hmm.
have a student rate,
Mm-hmm.
so you can verify you're a student.
Mm-hmm.
They can give you a highly discounted rate as well. So that's one avenue to do so. If it's still cost prohibitive, I always tell people, try to see that you can do the virtual, online seminar, which is a lot less costlier without the flight, the hotel, and you just do it from the comfort of your house. And at least you get the benefit of the seminars and learning more about the industry. And then once, you have money, then you can possibly go. The third avenue, I think, would be mentors. You can have a mentor and they might be able to have an extra pass for you. You never know. You can get in.
You gotta
ask. You never know.
Totally.
Yeah. Again, if you could afford to get there, you may not be able to afford the pass, but if you can afford to get there, bunk with a friend, share a room, whatever, there may be some opportunities that come to light just by being on the ground, right? I mean, I know I've been in a situation where some people have an extra ticket to a screening, or, I don't need this pass, I'm leaving 3 days early, don't tell anyone to take it. So it may be worth the investment of rolling in the dice and just showing up and seeing how, what you can bring about by your presence on the ground, right? Absolutely. All those stories, I've had them happen to me. I've actually given sometimes passes to people as well. I can't go to the screening here. Do you want it? Yeah. And then conversely, I've been lucky to go to some amazing red carpet premieres because that's happened to me. And, so you don't never know who you're going to meet, outside in the cafe.
But yeah, that's to your earlier point, which is, you don't need a credential to get into the Carlton Hotel. Like you don't need a credential to get to hang out in certain areas where there are a lot of people congregating, right?
Correct.
So where business is being done, so you can very well accomplish what you're looking to accomplish by just being present and socializing in the social areas, right? So.
Absolutely, and you can maybe set up appointments if you want to, or if you can, outside of the conference area. At the hotel, lobbies, at the restaurants, cafes. Your point.
That's good advice. So switching a little bit now again, and thinking more about, how do young people, or again, people who may be looking for career changes, how can they be strategic presently in the marketplace? So you're in business with a lot of companies. You talk with a lot of executives across the industry. Are there any particular organizations that would be great places to focus, a person's, job search or relationship building? We know the majors, the Amazons, the Netflixes, the Hulus, but but I suspect there are probably other organizations not as well known that might make for great career opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I always have some advice. Whenever I've talked to students, undergrad students, I have like 5 pieces of advice that I give them.
Okay.
Starting off in entertainment, and one is seeking mentors, and mentors could be either your peers on a personal level, on a professional level as well, and just keep building it. You just don't need one mentor. You could have mentors for different aspects of your career. Like I want to be a better public speaker, then you have a mentor for that. I want a peer, somebody that I feel like I look up to. So mentorships are great because those mentors can help you whenever you're seeking advice or counsel or challenged. They're a great resource for you. 2, networking. Networking is huge. And also making sure that you're abreast of the trades magazines, read all the trends. I get everything in my inbox that I can. And if I can't read it all, at least I read the headlines, which is key. So like I'm on, Deadline Hollywood, Variety, I've got Synopsis, I get Digital Europe.
Wow.
I just get a whole bunch of these, trade, magazines in my inbox every morning, and I try to read as many as I can.
Wow.
And then I see, executives' names. There's some people that I'm like, oh shoot, I should talk to that person. So I think that's important. Now that COVID is happening and we can't go to many trade shows or no trade shows at all, I've signed up for a whole bunch of virtual seminars so that I'm still connected. So I recommend students or people trying to get into an entertainment career to just really know their stuff. Attend as many seminars as you can, and then go above and beyond. Reach out to people, for maybe, let's say you reach out to 20 people, at least one person's going to get back to you. They're very busy, usually these, network executives, but there's always going to be one person who's going to, get back to you.
Be courteous enough to reply, right?
Yeah, hopefully to do that. But there's also different organizations that help, people of color. There's like NALEAV, which is for, Latinos who want to be in production as well. And they have a lot of programs to help, students or people who are trying to get into the content creation side of things as well. So there's various organizations that are not just corporate that can help young people who are trying to get into this industry space. And there's more programs now than there were, when I started as well. Yeah.
Great, that's good advice. I mean, and I'll name a couple. There's Color TV. I'm sure you know about Color TV. Maybe you don't, well, Color Entertainment, again, an organization devoted to people of color, helping them, build their careers in entertainment. There's the Walter Cates Foundation. I'm not sure if you know about that, but that was another. Your name it. There's those are the ones that come top of mind at the moment.
Women in cable and television. It's kind of, they changed it though because that's a little outdated, the whole cable and television part of it.
Yeah, totally. But to your point, I mean, there's lots of resources now, and it's just a matter of identifying them. And again, to the other point, which is, spend time absorbing the information. That's the power, right? Become valuable to a mentor because you've been paying attention to what's going on in the market, and you can provide some insight and some context. And so, speaking of which, we're about to wrap up, but when you think about the business you're in right now with your company and kind of what's on the horizon for the industry overall, like, what do you sense as, and I'm asking this question from the context of, again, people that may want to follow in your footsteps or do what you do. So where do you see the opportunities that have yet to be seized in the acquisitions world, distribution world, sales, like as an independent? What do you think is still up for grabs?
I think before COVID, what was really great was international productions, making their way to other markets. That's right. And that's sort of what I've been focusing on, which is bringing content, let's say content that was made in the UK to South America. I think with, let's say Netflix had so much success with that Spanish series called Money Heist.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
The movie Parasite, winning, Best Picture, and this year's Oscars. I think it's a telltale sign that people are now open to seeing content produced from other countries. That's not necessarily in English, but in the native language of that company. People are getting used to reading subtitles as they're watching programming. So I think what we're seeing now, and hopefully it'll continue post COVID, is being able to have that interconnectivity where we have all this, we're exposed to different content from different parts of the world that really brings us together. Content from India, in the US. For example, Turkish novellas do really well in Latin America and among the US Hispanic population.
I had no idea. Are you selling Turkish novellas in Latin America? Is that what you're doing these days?
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, I'm not doing it.
Send me one of these. I have to check one out. I have to see this. Send it to me. Send me a
yeah, I totally will. But they're doing really well. Korean novellas also do well among Latinos, and they're reading subtitles or they're having it dubbed in Spanish. But that's kind of where I see it, and international co-productions. I have a client in Europe, and they're looking for opportunities to have co-productions with American companies.
Wow, that's great. No, it sounds like you're right where you need to be, and it sounds like there's some great opportunities for you right around the corner post-COVID. So, hats off to you for making a move and working for yourself and building your own business. You know what I mean? You definitely, and I feel the same way. You've spent most of your career serving various masters, right? As these empires, I call them, but time for us to reinvest in ourselves, right? And take some of that and benefit from it. So amazing. Any final thoughts or anything you want to share before we close out the conversation?
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to share is we've talked about successes and everything that's positive, but in our careers, as in our personal life, there are moments of failure that happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that people don't usually talk about, which is what happens when you've done something that is considered a failure. I like to call it a learning experience. I had a boss. I've learned a lot from my bosses, as you can tell. I have anecdotes from each one, who once told me I was frustrated with something and something that I felt that we had failed at. And he says, you know what, this is the time when we're going to learn the most. It's when you're the most challenged that you are learning the most about yourself and how to do something better.
Wow.
And so my advice is don't be deflated. Don't get deflated. Learn from it. Have your own internal debrief, either with yourself or with others, to tell you, like, what didn't I do right? What could I have done better? But then move on. Don't sit in that moment. Just keep moving forward, because sometimes that can help, that can really hurt your self-confidence. And you might think, you know what, I'm not suited for this industry, or, I should just leave and do something else. And you'll learn that a lot of people in the C-suite, they've all had a lot of failures themselves, but what differentiates them from others is that they've gotten up and learned from them and moved on.
That's super important. I mean, I think one of the things I want to amplify that you just said about failures is for the business leaders, the department heads, the managers to take note of what you shared from your manager, because that was some incredible leadership tactics that he applied to you, because that brings out the best in you, right? So you want to then you want to learn from the experience and then do better, versus browbeat you and make you feel inadequate, because that's not going to get the best out of you. So of course, executives, young people, take note of that, but even more importantly, the people who manage people, take note of that leadership tip, right? Use, quote unquote, the failure of someone working under you as a learning experience, as an opportunity to encourage them to do better, right? Don't, so again, I just think that was really key, because we've all worked for people, that are horrible business leaders or horrible managers. And we've had to deal with the brunt of that. But again, we learn from them and we become better leaders ourselves by being managed by poor managers, right? So anyway, thanks for sharing. I'm really glad you hit that, because that was a really important point. Cool. Well, listen, Jasmine, I think it's been an incredible experience having you here in the Brooklyn Boardroom. I wish we can keep this thing going all day because you and I talk frequently enough, but I love talking to you. You're always full of energy and positivity, and that's what we need more in the world these days. So it's been such a pleasure having you as my guest. And I know everyone's going to really benefit from this conversation. So hopefully we'll have you back again, you know what I mean, when you're not so busy traveling the world, cutting deals in Russia and with Turkish novellas in Latin America. But again, it's been a pleasure. And for everyone watching, if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the YouTube page. It's the Brooklyn Boardroom on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram at BKLYN Boardroom. Same with Twitter, and then on Facebook, Brooklyn Boardroom. So again, subscribe, like, promote, let people know we're here to help, and see you on the next episode of the Brooklyn Boardroom. All right, deuces.